These last two sessions for tonight, we want to make as much of them as we can. So we're going to proceed somewhat as we went this morning and review the single most important points and later activities that we have to do in order to change our lives in a way which we cannot possibly imagine. And you understand that we cannot imagine this new state, because if we imagine it, we are simply pulling it out of memory and saying that this new state, this new way of living that we're talking about, is a different form of the old, which it is not. We're not simply pruning the old tree or trying to make it grow better. We're getting rid of it entirely so that we have an entirely new tree and therefore entirely new fruits. So during the second half after the coffee break, will you please proceed as follows with me? Try to think in very short sentences, one or more, as many as you like, of any of the points that we have discussed up to now that have been especially important to you. Now, this word important can mean many things. If a thought excited you in some way and you thrilled at it a little bit, that is a good sign. Or if it showed you perhaps a little bit of guidance in procedure, daily procedure for working on ourselves. Any thought or idea which you have collected during the past few days, which you can reduce to a single sentence, a very short sentence, please write it down or put it somewhere in your mind. You can have several if you want. And during the second half, I will ask you, those who want to volunteer on it, to mention these sentences out so that others can hear them too. And you'll find that perhaps something that was important to you might just be important to the other person too. You might catch him nodding a little bit, as I have seen you nod many times in here, which means you weren't conscious that anyone was watching you, which means it was spontaneous. See? So that will come about during the second half. And I will simply ask you to mention your punchy sentences, after which we will discuss them, or you can discuss them yourself if you want. Now, up until the question and answer period in this session, I'm going to review everything we've covered in a certain way, with a little bit new emphasis, a word. See, words are descriptions, and I'm going to emphasize a word which we've not possibly used at all, at least at a minimum, to describe both the problem and the cure. And the word is, the two words are unnatural and natural. Now, to make sure we know what we're talking about, what would be a number of synonyms for unnatural so that we understand what we're getting at? The psychiatrist would say it is neurosis. Religion would say it's alienation from God, separation from yourself. Psychologists would use another term, that you have not found yourself. Another type of religion would say we're living as sinners, on and on. A state where we're simply not living naturally, which to live naturally means to live without any inner conflict of any kind, emotionally, mentally, even physically, such as with physical habits. There's no conflict at all. To be natural, what would be synonyms for that? The kingdom of heaven is within, to be free of ourselves, to be a sane human being, to have a conscience, to possess genuine love, genuine compassion, to be a very simple, plain, decent, unassuming human being who is not striving for anything at all because he needs nothing at all. because he's not under the illusion that he lacks something. And therefore he does not destroy half the world trying to get what he thinks he needs. To illustrate all this in a way, I will tell you a story. In fact, two of them. And there's a little side thought of interest in this story, which I'm about to go into. See, the truth, the way out, is somewhere in man's mind, even though he doesn't think about it much or know anything about it. It's down in there somewhere. And this way out is not only expressed and described in religious books, such as the story of the prodigal son, some of your Eastern teachings, but your very commonplace books, even fables and fairy tales. If you look at it carefully enough, you'll see it's describing exactly what we're talking about. And I will tell you one such story, and if any of you are well up on your literature, you can probably track back its source, maybe some of you teachers here. And I will tell you the source later. It's a beautiful story, disguised as entertainment, which it is. It's a very entertaining story. But you see how exactly it describes what we're going into now, this particular approach of naturalness and unnaturalness. There was a king of a great country, a vast country, and a very wealthy country, and a fairly happy king, at least he got along a little bit. And he heard of a very beautiful nightingale that lived out in the woods. And he heard so many reports of this beautiful bird and its beautiful song that he asked his servants, his aides, to ask the bird if it would come in and sing for him. So the aides went out and asked the bird to come into the palace and sing for the emperor, which the bird agreed to do. So the bird came in, and an audience was set up in front of the king, and all the royal people around in their robes, and the king on his throne. And the bird sang, and he did sing indeed quite beautifully, a beautiful melodious song. And the king was enchanted, I get the two mixed up. And he asked the bird if he would stay in the court all the time and just sing for him, cheer him up when he was blue and so on, which the bird agreed to do. So this went on for a while, and the king was delighted. They had this bird around. The bird was happy too, singing for the king and making everybody happy. So after a while, a few weeks, a box arrived in the palace from some unknown source, addressed to the king, and opening the box, he saw a very strange but very attractive looking object in it. And this object was a mechanical nightingale. And it was beautifully made. A great mechanical artist had created this bird. And it was jewelry, diamonds, and rubies all about it. Very, very beautiful. So the king said, here's another bird that maybe I'll have double the pleasure and double the beauty in my palace if this bird can sing as beautiful as the original one, as the original nightingale. So again, an audience was set up, and the mechanical bird was wound up. And sure enough, he sang very beautifully. The king detected a little bit of a difference between it and the original bird, but still it was quite an attractive song. And gradually, because the king was interested in physical beauty and diamonds and rubies, and because the bird was encrusted with this, why, gradually the king began to forget about the original bird and to replace it with a mechanical one. So this went on quite a while until eventually came to the point where no one ever noticed, in not only the king but the entire palace, forgot all about the original nightingale, who then saw that he was not wanted there, but not rejected or anything, but simply not welcome. So it flew out the window and went back to the woods. So the king went on with the mechanical bird for a long time, until one day he felt particularly blue over something, probably something having to do with running his kingdom, and feeling blue, and he actually fell ill. So he called for the mechanical bird to be set up in front of him to sing his song, to cheer him up. But this time when the bird was wound up, something snapped. So the bird couldn't sing anymore. So he called in the royal mechanics, and they worked frantically over it, trying to make it go again, but the whole thing was busted. Nothing. So the king, not having his usual support, instead of getting better and cheery, he fell sicker and sicker and sicker. Until he got to the point where he started reflecting about his whole life, what had happened to him. Then way back in his mind, you're ahead of me, aren't you? Way back in his mind, he remembered the original bird that he had neglected so long out in the woods. But now he was doubtful and a little bit afraid, because after all, it was his responsibility, his fault. The bird had left there and gone back into the wood. So he sent his assistants to ask the bird if it would come back and sing for him as it did before. And he was a little bit anxious because he didn't know. Sending his servants out there, the bird, of course, agreed to come back, hearing the king's story of how ill he was, and that the king himself had made the request. The bird came back and sang, and the king was restored to health. Do any of you recognize the source of that? It's kind of interesting as a sidelight where that comes from. You've heard the name 1,000 times. The title of the story, pardon?
That Hans Christian Andersen?
Yes. Hans Christian Andersen, and the story is The Nightingale. You might, just out of interest, look it up sometime. This time, read it esoterically. And you'll see why certain types of literature actually endure. Not simply because they're entertaining, but because there's something deep down inside that people say, they don't know they sense it, but it's telling something about their life. Fairy tales and even jokes. And I'll tell you a little joke. You may have even heard this on television. Now I'll tell you the source of this. I think you know this. This is very short. There was a man who would... this is from Sufism, who is a branch of the Mohammedan religion, and the only mystical branch of it. And they live generally as Christians live in the Western world. They're in North Africa and Asia Minor, around there. But there was a man who was searching around in the night in the marketplace under a light, searching around for something down there, and his friend came along and asked him what he was searching for, and he said, I've lost my key. And his friend asked him, where did you lose it? He said, I lost it outside my house a mile down the road. You're not supposed to laugh yet. And he said, well, why are you searching for it here? And he said, well, there's more light here. All right, and you'll hear that on television. It's a joke. Did you see the connection? He's searching in the wrong place, simply because it is easier to look where he thinks he might find it, because the light is there, what he calls light, instead of looking in the hard place, in the darkness, where the thing actually is. All right, back to the idea of connecting everything we have said with the idea of living from our original nature, from naturalness, instead of from all the artificial ideas we have collected. We're going to go over the same ground again that you asked about before and see why we are in the problem and how we can be not just partly free of it, but completely free of it. Downstairs, the point was brought up that the more difficult the condition, the more opportunity we have for breaking through and having more insight, because we have gone against a tougher opposition. So the more unnatural state, difficult state, we find ourselves in, that is the best time to work. Do you understand by this time some idea of what we mean by work before I go on? All right, we'll review it after I get through this point, what we mean by working. Things are going very well with me. I have no problems, no particular problems, financial, domestic, health, whatever. So I come to a group like this and I hear that I have to start changing my life. Well, all right, I assent to that. Things aren't perfect by any means. But they're not too bad either. And so I don't proceed with any of these work projects, which we will review, because I have no incentive to do so. So I'm not going to get anything because I'm not trying to get anything. But I run into a crisis of some kind, any kind. And now it becomes very difficult for me to work because this crisis is tearing me away from my knowledge of procedure. It's tearing me away emotionally from it. And it's very difficult for me to do anything. If you're really serious about this, work all the time, but the next time you're in a bad state, a bad mood, then you work. You deliberately go against this state that doesn't want to work, that wants nothing to do with it. And you will gain 10 times as much than if you work when things are going well. Do you understand why? Same illustration. If I have one book here and I exercise with one book, that's very lightweight. That doesn't build my muscles. Anybody can do that. I have 10 books and I exercise with those. This causes friction in me, conflict. I have to make an effort. And every effort I make when I don't want to make one makes me awake. It shocks me. Find a time. You may right now, all right, you're right here now, and most of you are in a, what we would call a good positive mood. That's fine, great. But maybe in a couple days from now, you won't be. This is up to you. You watch yourself. And you may find it very easy to attend to me now, which you are doing, and this is a form of work. But 2 or 3 days from now, when these meetings are over, in fact, they're over tonight, and you have got away from this atmosphere, and this is a very healthy atmosphere, by the way. You won't find much more healthy atmosphere anyway, because this is the truth. It's not me, not you. This is the truth that's in here. When you find yourself in this mood, you say, that man up there said, I will get more if I work now when I'm in this bad mood. All right. Now we'll find out when we are in this mood what it means to work. We'll make a long list, as many as I can just pull out of the air that we have covered so far. The very first step to change your life, to work, to not be a victim of either the external world or the internal world, is to observe the state you are in at the moment you are in it. This is the first and most important, because if you don't do this, you can't go on to the other. And we can deceive ourselves that we're working when we're really not, if we do not take this first step. And let's see what it involves. It involves simply seeing the state, the mood, the attitude, the thought that is passing through me. And this is all in the world I do. If I do anything more than this, I have made an error. Now, I can't continue to work properly. Now, we will make errors all along the way. I see, what? A gloomy mood, a depressed mood. I see it. Now, if I do not identify with it, and what does that mean? That means that I do not say, this is my true nature, this is my actual self, because it isn't. It isn't unless you repeat it into the next second, and the next second, and the next second, and continue it by your own unawareness of being in it. Do you remember downstairs when we were gathered around there, we had a very brief but very good discussion on the fact that you, sir, and this gentleman, and this lady are new every split second, even as you are sitting here. You do not really live in time. Your physical body does, but you are not your physical body. The tree lives in time. The automobile lives in time. They will rust. The bodies will go away. You, the essential you, essence, the kingdom of heaven within, does not live in time. You have to follow very closely. I see this mood of depression in me. I've done the first step. I see it. All right? So far? If I'm very alert and have learned my lessons and worked on my lessons, I will then know that it need not continue into the next second of time. I'm using the word time because we have to use words. By seeing that I need not remain in it, it cannot continue because the next moment that I am in is fresh, and it does not have this negativity in it, this depression in it. But if I say I am depressed, I walk right in with it, so to speak, into the next second, and the next second, and the next minute, and the next hour, so that I become depressed for maybe an hour or two, or maybe for many days. Because I have not understood that my essence is free of time, that it does renew itself every second. Having observed the depressed mood, I do not say that this is the essential I. It is not me at all. You may not even understand what you're saying when you say this the first time. Never mind that. We don't understand anything we say the first 10 times or the first 50 times. But this is how we work. This is the fact of how you work it. When you do it often enough, not just with depression, but with any negative emotion or any negative state at all, you will begin to find that you will be able to detach yourself from it instantly, right now. Not when something good happens, when you get good news an hour later, or someone smiles at you or cheers you up, or then Nightingale sings again. You are your own Nightingale, and there is no other. Now you have detached yourself from the mechanical repetition of negative feelings and thoughts. This is the greatest single fact of what we mean by self-work, and there are many more facets to it. Now, do you also recall we said it is the nature of thoughts to flow just as a river flows? A river doesn't stop. It can be dammed up artificially. When we do not hold our thoughts in time, in order to feel a false sense of self, then our thoughts flow quite freely and quite naturally without any effort on our part at all. See, it takes great effort to be neurotic. It does. It takes so much energy to be sick. It takes no effort at all to be well, to be healthy. An unwell human being spends his life, his energy, fighting, clawing at other people, at circumstances, at himself. And by the way, do you see that hostility and aggression out there is equal by hostility and aggression in there? It's exactly the same. You treat your neighbor exactly as you treat yourself. There is no difference. We may think so because we artificially divide things. I cannot tell you a lie. I cannot hurt you. I cannot be unkind to you without it having the same effect on me. If I try to burn down your house, that very fire burns down my house. It's the same fire. When I understand this, among other things, I'm beginning to be free from the effort of living. Can you see it all? Why there's no effort in living freely and naturally? You have nothing to fight. You have no opposition, which was never out there anyway. It was right in here, as we discovered many times. Now, as another work project, we're going to get right down to earth in daily human relations. As you go out in the world, in the marketplace, among your friends, wherever you might be, almost without thinking about it, you observe other people and you understand certain things about them. You may know why they say certain things, why they behave the way they do. But from now on, as another work idea, you begin to connect everything you see and observe and experience in the world of people with what you have learned in these classes. Become an expert, and you will become an expert, in human behavior by doing this. And at the same time that you do this, you understand, of course, that your observation is always in both directions, out toward that person and in toward this person. And it is no work at all if you are simply observing out there without turning it at the same time toward yourself to see your reaction to observing the other person. You practice this and you'll see what I mean. We said that one thing it does is to cancel self-righteousness. How easy it is simply to criticize someone, either silently or outwardly, verbally, because this gives me, if I do it, a sense of righteousness, of superiority over you, which means I'm still hanging on to my false sense of self. I may not rob a bank, as maybe the other man did, and I feel very superior to the man who robbed the bank and is now in prison. But I may do something far more damaging. I may be very cruel to my wife. I may be very cruel to my husband and never have the slightest idea that I'm doing this. So when I observe the evil, the unnaturalness in the world, I also turn it back on myself and see the same thing in myself. Then, if you recall, I experience something which we have called a shock, because I have always found it much more pleasant to say the world problems are caused by you or by your group or by your business organization or your labor union or whatever. It's much easier to blame you than to see that I am just as ill as you are, but I haven't the slightest idea of it because I've never looked at myself. So the double arrow of seeing the other person and seeing yourself at the same time cancels self-righteousness and cancels that rather horrible state which we call hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is a very strong word, I know, is always a state of a person who is divided against himself. He is hiding something from himself. And there's no point on earth talking to him unless he wants to see this in himself, because he'll run away from you, either actually physically sometimes, or at least mentally, because the pain is too much to bear. I want to leave the rest of the time open, about 15 minutes, to open discussion and questions and answers. Would you please center them as much as you can around the topic, or connect them with the topic of naturalness and unnaturalness?
Is there any particular way you can start observing yourself? What's the best way to do it?
Were you aware just then that you gestured with your left hand as you spoke to me? This is what we're talking about. This is the beginning. Watch your physical self. Watch it operate. Try to see your motives behind why you say something, the real motive. Maybe it's for no greater motive than because we talk mechanically and we just love to hear ourselves talk mechanically. That is insight. You start to observe yourself by observing yourself and not resisting what you see. Excuse me.
What about using imagination once you observe yourself in a certain situation? And then you say, well, now when this situation happens again, imagine how you will react to it.
May I suggest that we don't use the word imagination. Let's explain imagination very briefly. On the everyday level, we use imagination properly, and that's where it belongs. We imagine how the house will look if we add another room to it or something like that. As proper. Imagination can be a terrible trap wrongly used. May I simply suggest that instead of using that word imagination, that you simply remember how you behaved in a certain situation. Just remember it. You don't have to go any deeper. Remember how you behaved. And then in another similar situation, you watch yourself. And maybe you'll see that you behave mechanically in it, the same way. Now, I'll add something to this. We have not talked an awful lot about the emotion of fear, of being afraid. But we're going to, I'll go into it very, very briefly to connect it with. Please, as part of your self-observation, in order to detect unnaturalness, in order to be in a state of naturalness, please try to see how afraid you are. And may I request that you do not say that you're not afraid. Try to find little instances of it at work or in the home, and find how you behave towards someone who has some kind of human level authority over you. You name it. Who is it? The boss? Is it your wife? Is it your husband? Is it a parent, a domineering type parent who you've never been able to break away from because they made you what you are today? I'm not being harsh toward your parents. We're all in the same boat. Try to find a situation where you suspect you are afraid of a human being. And observe it, and then remember everything that we have said. 1, it is a hoax, and you don't even see through it as yet. We're trying to see through it, that it is a hoax. It's an imposition on us. Try to see, B, that you have given this person power over you by your own mind and by nothing else. And if you don't believe it, you clarify your mind and you won't be afraid of any human being on earth. And you won't be afraid to be in a situation where you may even want something from another person because it's required on a certain level, but you're not afraid that he'll deny it to you. We become afraid of someone for a number of reasons. 1, because we think they can give us something psychological. My wife keeps me from being lonely. My husband keeps me from being afraid of financial insecurity. He makes a certain amount of money a month, and we pay our bills. Therefore, I'm not too worried about my bills because he is my financial security. And as long as I have this, I may be afraid of him. I may be afraid that he'll leave me. Now look, you have to be dreadfully honest about this. This is, you find your own situations. You observe yourself where you were afraid of someone, or you're afraid that someone you are depending on may leave you. Whenever you lose anything, a person of value in your life, regardless of how the departure takes place, when you lose a human being, or you lose an advantage or an opportunity, or you lose your income, whether you lose anything at all, you stay right where you are, and don't you dare try to replace it. Don't you dare. Because you will give yourself a tremendous shock. Someone loved the illustration that the path to heaven goes through hell. This is what you're doing. But now you're being conscious of what you're doing. You're being aware of it. And if you will stay right in the center of your sorrow and of your anguish and your heartache when you lost, wherever you lost, and don't run away, and you watch yourself suffer, you will smash it entirely. You will have risen about 8 miles toward this freedom we're talking about. And don't you dare complain to anyone about anything when you lose something. You know, we have to be men. We have to be women when we do this. We have to stand up.
It seems like the truths that I need the most are going to be the hardest ones for me to figure out. The ones that are coming are the ones that is this natural, that I don't need as much? the truths that I need the most are going to be coming the last, I think I can see.
It may be because you're farther away from them now, you see.
They're a harder problem for me to see.
Well, they're more deeply buried because there's something that doesn't want to see them, because there's something that wants to hang on to you, to keep its hopes over you. But that's not important. You just get whatever comes your way. Use anything that comes your way. Never mind, as we said before, never mind results. Never mind which way the path turns. That's unimportant, whether it goes left, right, up, or down. Whatever comes to you is the perfect place to work. It's a perfect place to break down self-centeredness, and wondering what other people are going to think about us. Another example of fear. Can you detect, perhaps, that you want people to like you, which does not mean you go out and make people dislike you? What if you were free of that? Can you imagine how your behavior and your words would change if you didn't care what other people thought of you? This will happen in the right way, because when you are nobody, when you don't live from false personality, there's nothing to make an impression on. See, there's nothing there, and that nothing is everything for you. Can you detect behaving in an artificial, unnatural way because you want someone to like you, notice you, appreciate you, be around you, give you what you want? If you can detect that, and then say, I'm going to just simply drop this, regardless of what happens, you will become free. And there will be a change in your relationship with this other person. This is not your concern. You have no responsibility for any human being on earth except yourself. You just get over this false guilt that you are here to save the world. You're not. We can't even save ourselves. And that's exactly why we want to save the world, as an easy substitute. The simplest thing in the world is to become a savior of the world. The hardest thing to do is to save ourselves, which is honesty, which is the only thing that will bring health and sanity to the world. This is a world where insane people are teaching insane people how to be sane. And you know it.
How do you act then if you're trying to not put on this facade, for these people? I mean, just what do you do?
You act with total ease. With total ease. All right, let's get in a situation. You're invited to the party at Helen's house, Mary's house, in case there's a Helen. Anybody's house. And there are 15 people there. You're a worker. You're all through messing around with your life. You're on the way. You go into the room of 15 or 20 people. Now, for heaven's sakes, the minute you open the door, your ear gets deaf with the blabbing you hear inside there, right? You're working. So you go in there, walking consciously, being aware that your hands are at your side and it's a little hot and you'd like to take your coat. You're conscious of everything. So you walk into this situation, very alert, not blabbing mentally, not looking for someone to talk to just because everybody else. You're becoming very aware, first of all, of the situation out there. Now you're working on yourself too, and you're not perfect yet, see? So you're working. And you notice your tendency to become just as blabby as they are. This guy brags about his raise, and so you brag about your new patio you just built. See, we're in competition all the time. Now you're working alertly and lively. You're working naturally, at ease, relaxed, and you'll go home fresh and happy and sane, and they will go home very tired because they've been, you know what's tiring? To put on masks and take it off all night long at the party. What can I say? You'll be natural, and you'll be sitting down in a corner, not staring at people. You become very subtle about it. You're watching everybody. And now look, not in criticism, but to work. Because you look at that man over there with his false personality blabbing 90 miles an hour about how he's traveled all over the world, and you know, in Ceylon, we went to the temple and we prayed, on and on, he never stops. You say, I am not going to waste my energy that way. And you don't, because you begin to see the damage of it. I am not going to live that way. So you behave quite naturally. They don't know a thing about it. And they're not interested, but you know.
This area you're talking about working where you're in a depression, and you say that's the most helpful, and you want to stop that very instant about continuing to be depressed. What thoughts or what actions do you take to turn that at that point? I mean, you said, okay, now it's exactly 8 after 9, I'm going to stop this.
Well, if you turn on a light in a dark room, that's all you need to do as an illustration. When you become conscious that you are in a depressed state, a negative state, there is nothing else to do. Do you see? This is like, again, is the beauty of it. If I see that I am depressed, I'm noticing it now, and I understand that depression can only exist in mechanical thought, and it continues in mechanical thought because I never heard of such a thing as consciousness, awareness, which can stop mechanical thought. So I've practiced this for a while, and I finally got it. I finally dislike being depressed because I see that does make me the center of attention. I go to the therapy group, and everyone wants to be more sick than the next guy because he gets more attention. But I'm not going to live this way anymore. So I turn on the light, and I understand that depression is there because I secretly love it. It gives me certain false values. It gives me a false feeling of life. And also justifies my complaints against how mean my wife was to me for 20 years, or my husband. I'm having a great time suffering. When the light is turned on, there can't be both light and darkness at the same time. We're practicing and being experts in turning on the light switch, you might say. It goes off all the time at first because we haven't done this long enough or hard enough. Pretty soon it will go on and stay on all the time in the state of awareness, except where we need to use memory. Then you're not in the state of consciousness, but you're not in negative thought. You're simply in practical thought. We covered that a number of times. Maybe 2 more questions I think we should go down. Yes.
Would you please discuss that indecision and what to do about it?
Indecision. We did discuss that, I mentioned before, and we're going to go into it. May we hold that, because it's a little involved, until we come back, please. We'll go into indecision at the beginning of the second session. So one more question.
You mentioned responsibility for no one. I think I know your answer, but is this with children too, our own children as well? There's no way you could possibly, I suppose, start?
2 levels. One, you have responsibility financially, physically. That's not what we're talking about. You take that, obviously. So what is your responsibility? We said the only responsibility you have is to be a sane, decent, awake human being. You take that, and that is the only responsibility you have. And may I add something, please? If your children turn out bad, don't you dare fall into guilt over it, even if you did it to them. You free yourself right now of anything you may have done to your children 5 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 50 years ago. Don't you repeat it. Don't you carry that on. You may have been asleep then, and you may have injured your children. Not altogether. The rest of the world has its share too. We had our share. You have no business ever feeling guilty or ashamed over anything wrong you did 1 second ago or 50 years ago. Because this is simply another form of self-centeredness in order to maintain your false sense of self. You die to the past of 1 second ago and 50 years ago. Have the courage to do it and see what happens. You'll see. Let's go downstairs now. And indecision, which we will do, and then if you have some of these short points to discuss, we'll then take those up. When you are living in this new whole, capital W-H-O-L-E, world, no psychological decisions are necessary at all. Whenever we have to make a psychological decision, and that will be explained in a minute, it is because we are still divided from ourselves. And we think by making this choice that it will fulfill us or keep us safe or keep us secure, which it will not do. Any choice you or I make in an effort to feel self-secure will only make us feel more insecure, because we have separated ourselves from our natural nature, our true nature, even more. Why do I make any decisions at all of a psychological nature? We're not talking about decisions on the everyday level up to vacation in Vermont or New Hampshire. That's a simple choice. I think about it and take the one that offers me most fun for the less expenses. Why do I make any psychological decision at all, which might be one or more of the following? Should I get married or shouldn't I? Should I get unmarried or shouldn't I? Should I behave in a different way toward this person than I usually behave? Find your own examples of where you find yourself in a state of indecision, and you will also see quite clearly and quite obviously that it's a state of self-division. We live in self-division because we're trying to make memory, part of the mind, do the work that only the whole person can do. This connects again with self-images, with a wanting to be safe and secure in a world that seems so terrifying. Do you know, I'm going to parenthetically add, as far as a free mind, a free person is concerned, the world is not frightening in the slightest. It does not exist as a frightening world. The world exists as a frightening thing to a person who is a part of it, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. If we fight the world, it is because we are still part of it. When you are no longer living as a part of the madness of the world, it is because you are sane. You've separated yourself, but in a different kind of separation. When I have essence, when I have returned to the kingdom of heaven within, I am a single unit, which is not divided from another man who has also found the kingdom of heaven. There's no division between us. Truth is one. God is one. In this state, I make no decisions at all, except on the everyday level, because I have nothing to get. Therefore, I have nothing to decide, because neither choice can give me anything. If I have just had a good dinner, I don't have to agonize between the dinner you offer me and the dinner you offer me. I don't have to think about it and say, no, this would be better than this. I'm satisfied. I don't know how I can summarize it much clearer than that, except to say, as a work project, if you can observe yourself in an indecision, part of your self-observation, you will find yourself switching back and forth, which in itself should be a clue that a true decision, judgment, is not being made. True judgment is when there is no judgment of advantage or disadvantage, because there is no one there. The false sense of self is a nervous wreck. When it gets up in the morning, it has to start making mad plans for confirming itself. And it does it for days, for years, 50 years, and never notices that nothing satisfies, regardless of the choice that is made. Any choice will only lead to further division. When you're fully aware of being in division, quite aware of it, and can watch it, now you can start to not identify with it and to die to it. Pretty soon you'll make no choices at all. You won't be driven. I'll tell you what to do, and then I'll end with this, on this phase. Find something that is enormously attractive to you. Men look at pretty girls. Maybe girls look at handsome men. You look at the new house. You look at the new car. Look something that appeals to you. And say to it, "You're all through. I'm not going to put myself in bondage to you. This is a part of a decision you're making. You want it. And we plot how to get it. Say, you're all through keeping me captive, you attractive nuisance." You understand what I'm getting at? Something that is very appealing. This gives you tremendous power because you're doing the exact thing you don't want to do. Refuse attractive things. Say no to them. It'll shock you. And this is what we're always looking for. Something that'll shock us awake. Then you'll be able to see the beautiful automobile or the beautiful house or the beautiful new condition, whatever it might be. You'll be able to see it. Nothing. You don't become its slave anymore. People are a slave to any attractive sight they run across. Anything. Even to a chocolate cake. Say to the chocolate cake, "You're all through taking me over." All right, did any of you come up with short, concise statements that you might read aloud that others might like to hear and that either you might comment on or I might?
Because I know, as you say, it's like the book exactly.
Right, very good. In other words, overcoming a big obstacle is greater than overcoming a small one. You persist in it. Therefore, you'll get more. I believe this lady had her hand up.
Well, probably this whole lecture series could be reduced to 2 words. Know thyself.
Know thyself. Self-knowledge. Very good.
And the greatest impact would be to be true to that
To be true to ourselves, did you say?
self, to the true self.
Yes, be true to the true self, to our original natural nature.
I mean, really are asleep. They're, at least I feel they are. They're used to a lot of things. I mean, they've been brainwashed a certain way, brought up a certain way, and unless you want to start big arguments all the time, it looks to me like you'd has to be some deception. Just get along.
Well, that was more of a kind of question.
Well, I suppose. I mean, could you actually live your life then, you say, without doing that?
Why don't you try it and find out?
Well, I used to. And I used to get a lot more arguments. Now I think you're swimming.
You know, how much are you willing, how much are you, each one of you here, willing to give up to find the true kingdom? How much are you willing to give up? This is all that counts. You try giving something up in favor of being a more unified person, and you watch how questions like that disappear entirely. You are not concerned with them anymore. You know, you'll understand everything. You'll know why certain human laws are on the books. You know why certain people like to wear uniforms and robes. How can I tell you? You find out for yourself.
When the statement was made that if a person destroys another, he tries to destroy another, he destroys himself.
Correct.
Now, you mean that psychologically?
Yes. of
And
course.
you mean, means that you're making yourself stay in the unnatural state that you
Yeah.
acquired, I see, in the stunts growth.
You attract to yourself, this connects, you attract to yourself whatever you are. You do indeed. I heard a statistic accidentally just before coming here, and I don't have it exact, but it was something like this. 85% of people who were murdered by relatives and friends within their own circle, not by strangers. Which means that they were in association psychologically and physically with these people, with these other people. Which means that they were on the same level. Like attracts like. If I am unnatural, I will find other unnatural people enormously appealing to me, because I have called unnaturalness greatness, and I've called it dynamic personality, and I call it a man who's sure of himself. He never falters in his talk. I become my own victim. Remember we said we are never injured by anything but ourselves? My self-deception expresses itself out to other people. And it has to be on the same level as, in other words, I will want to be with other self-deceiving people. And then we form a little group that hates a second group or a third group. All organizations have hatred as one of their major negative emotions. You may not believe this. As I become healthy, I give up all this sort of thing, and I don't go down to the bar anymore, where I used to go down and get into fights every third month or whatever. I don't associate with people on this level because it has no interest to me. I'm not interested in sickness anymore. I'm not interested in my own sickness anymore. Therefore, I'm not interested in associating with yours so as to partly justify my own. You agree with me when I tell you how awful that group over there treated me. So now I feel better. I have a friend. This friend will destroy you. Not really him. You have destroyed yourself by not seeing your own attitude.
There's a saying, the quality of your being attracts your light.
Very good.
And this is
Same thing.
That's
Right.
that figure.
It does indeed, psychologically.
So should you change these associations as quickly as you can?
No, you don't do anything like that at all. You change yourself, and they will run away from you real fast.
Really?
Yes.
I kind of lost it, maybe it's because I haven't been to other sessions, but on the fact of motivation, it seems to me that when you live in a natural state, from what we referred to tonight, you get to a state of being sort of, just going along and not really causing any frictions and so forth, which is a beautiful way to live, of course, but how about motivations? You've got to set goals for yourself, whether it's personal goals or other goals, or is there only one motivation, and that's the search for truth? I'm wondering.
You answered your own question. This, if I may say, is quite a common question and a common problem to people, and I will say it the way it is often phrased, and I think I did a couple of nights ago. People say, among other things, look, this scares the life out of people. Here's the way it usually goes. I've heard I could write a book. should be called the best known objections I have known or something like that. One of them is like this, and this will connect with it. But all this attention to your inward life will make you dull and lifeless. We've got to get involved with life. We've got to get involved. They pound the table. I'm imitating them. We've got to get in action. We've got to do something. We've got to get these kids an anti-dope establishment down there. Let's get together and get an organization together and find out how to help these kids. And they go down to the meeting and they fight like 5-year-old kids and don't even see it. And they are going to help these kids on dope. They're on dope themselves psychologically. The whole thing is an illusion that you can give a thing to anyone unless you yourself are a healthy human being, until you've gone through this, until you've seen how sick you are. All right, how confused you are. That's a little softer. Then you have something to give to someone else, and not before. Well, how easy it is to be vain and think that I can help you. Now I don't have to do a thing but lie to myself all day long. But if I do the hard thing, the real hard thing, then I become of help to someone, true help. And I'm not going to build a school or anything like that. If I straighten myself out, and if you straighten yourself out, there would be no such problems as this. It isn't going to change, you understand. You change yourself. You can't change the world, and you won't.
What is your comment? So many people say about every 5 years they need a new challenge and new goals and this type of thing. Are they just simply chasing themselves in a circle?
Yeah. They're setting up an ideal. It is not wrong to be efficient in business. That's another thing. When I am unhappy, but don't know it, and I usually don't when I'm not, because it's unconscious, because I've called myself happy and successful and busy and all that, and energetic. When I am unhappy, the only thing I know to do, if I do not know these things, is to set up some kind of a goal of what I'm going to get. And I may or I may not get this goal. It all depends on accidental factors, not on my great intelligence and drive. And when I get this goal of 3 years or 5 years, I never notice that I'm not 1 ounce happier than I was before, because I've covered it up by attaining this goal. I now own 17 houses and collecting mortgages on them. And I'm going to tell you about it as often as I can, because this is the only thing I have, see, is getting that money on those 17 houses. And when I get 34 houses and the mortgages, and I sit down and I figure out the interest and send you back the book, and I got all that dough, and then I want to drink because I'm sick. When I am one with myself, I don't have to have artificially created goals. I am my own goal, to put it that way. I'm living with myself, my true nature, not my egotistical self. Goals. This may end your participation in all business seminars. Goals are a distraction from facing our actual inner emptiness. And quite by accident, laws, some people attain their goals, and they didn't attain them at all. It just happened the way it had to happen, through accidental factors. And they are the ones who give up and give the talks at these business seminars, not those who didn't get them. But we won't get into that. Yes?
On responsibility in this area too. If we have as a goal for ourselves to seek truth for ourselves as our only goal and motivation, okay, that to me would imply that we've got a responsibility, not only responsibility to ourselves, but to our fellow man. You know, because we could be an awful lonely creature if we suddenly attain the truth and cannot communicate it to somebody else. Now, with that responsibility, my question is, the only way that we can give this responsibility or accept it is to maybe be an example to somebody else? Or do we have to, for example, in your own position, give talks and try to make other people aware? Now, that's a responsibility. And if that's so, you're not an individual any longer.
I understand. First, your responsibility toward yourself and your responsibility to other people are exactly the same. There's no difference in them. You cannot possibly become healthy without making another person healthy who wants it. You're not going to find, I keep repeating, you're not going to find a lot of people who want this. Now, as for becoming a speaker and a teacher or a writer, I don't know whether this will be your particular aim or not. If you have to teach others, there is something wrong, because you may even have a lot of facts on the intellectual level, but the compulsive need to teach others is just as much a trap as drinking or anything else. Because you are looking at me now, and I'm standing up here, and I'm quite the center of attention, and you buy my books from publisher and so on. And if I'm getting ego gratification from it, I won't have a thing to give you. But if I'm standing here, understanding certain things, and being quite aware that I might fall into the trap of being pleased that you flatter me and tell me how great I am and you buy my books, if I am aware of all this happening to me right now as I'm standing here, and I don't identify with it, now I can stand here and tell you things, and I'm not setting up a false sense of self. Then I can go out of here and get on the bus back to Boulder City and not sit there on the bus and dream about all the nice people who applauded me and so on. And I won't care whether I give another talk in my life or not, or read a book. I'm using myself as an example, if I may. Because I am very pleased with what I have found. And I don't have a compulsive need to say it, but if you and I meet sometime and you say, you know, I'm really interested in this type of thing. I maybe didn't read my book, I read some other book. Why don't we talk about it sometime? Fine, come on over and let's talk about these things. But I don't set myself up as being superior to you in knowledge or anything like that. That would be my trap. So a compulsive need to teach is out. But sitting and talking is fine. As for being an example, not many people want you to be an example of this type of thing. See? They're not going to know you're in this, which is something that you have to die to if we are getting any gratification out of knowing esoteric truths. No decisions are necessary in this area either when you find yourself. Yes?
From what you said Monday night, you wouldn't be lonely if you couldn't communicate with someone else about it.
You would not be lonely if
Isn't
you
that what
could.
you said Monday night, that you would not be lonely yourself if you couldn't communicate the truth to someone else?
No, you would not be lonely under any circumstances. Loneliness, see, you know that people can be in a big crowd and be lonely? See? So that means that loneliness is a state in themselves. When you're whole with yourself, it doesn't mean you're so pleased with yourself you don't need anyone else. It simply means that you can walk in and walk out as a free human being and enjoy. Now you're really going to enjoy other people because you don't have to compulsively talk, for example. You can sit there and be very quiet and not say a word. Remember, we said when you go to the party, you sit down and just watch and listen. We can take about 5 more minutes. Then I will say about 3 words in conclusion. Any more short points? Any more questions at all? Comments?
You made a comment about a guy playing golf. You kind of said poor soul or something like that. Do you recall that or what you were referring to?
I don't recall the golf comment, no. I'm sorry. Please, we will conclude this then. Please answer to yourself whether you have felt something here during these classes. And I know you have. And I will tell you that what you have felt here is very true, it's very honest, and it's very real. It may be very, very small, but But you feel it, and I know you do. I can see it on your faces. This is the beginning. You want to use religious terms or psychological terms, use anything you want. It makes no difference. This is the beginning of being born again. This is the beginning of becoming an authentically sane human being in an insane world. And then that insane world has no touch upon you whatsoever, none, even though you're right in the center of it, conducting your business or in your home. This is the beginning of being a human being who can sit quietly and not stir up problems as other people do, because you are now no longer a problem to yourself. When I am not a problem to myself, I cannot possibly be a problem to you. Now, when you go out of here, you just work at this like you've never worked at anything in your life, in a very relaxed, easy, but very intense way, and enjoy it, because it is nothing but enjoyment. And you will see this. It'll become more fun all the time. Then, when what you have gained, primarily as knowledge in these classes, goes into your emotions, into your feelings, you now have two centers which are operating in unison. And when even just two of them come together, you will then feel something very strange and very different. And nothing in the world would ever make you go back to the old ways again. Nothing. You're on the way. Just keep working every day. You won't gain a thing, you will lose something. Then when that emptiness is full, completely full, then the kingdom of heaven is there, and that's all there is. And then the idea of not having any separate identity is no longer fearful to you. It's not on your mind, it's not in your thoughts. Then you go about, everything is just as you did before, but inwardly everything is totally different. You will see.